We should never allow the government to decide what is acceptable speech and what is unacceptable speech. We should penalize behaviors, not opinions, and not speech. If you start trying to regulate speech, you start trying to regulate thoughts, you start trying to regulate beliefs rather than behaviors, there's no way that you're not going to abridge the constitutional rights of millions of Americans.
Today, right now, you have more power at your fingertips than entire generations that came before you. But it's not really about what technology can do, it's about what you can do with it. We are living in the future we always dreamed of. We have mixed reality that changes how we see the world, and AI empowering us to change the world we see. So what will you do with it?
The Tower of Babel and the Black Panthers. How can people not see what is being shown to us every day on television? Are people so blinded by their own stupidity that they don't want to see, or do they know and don't care? I would think this is an obvious issue of they don't want to see, they don't want to care. The Olympics have come to South Korea, ads are plastered on our sets every few minutes. In the chaos of these ads, we see simple and very obvious references to a socialist system that has been instigated. Obama himself said he adhered to socialism. He has controlled our lives for 8 years, yet nothing he did wrong was ever investigated or explained by the federal government. The opposite can be said though about Donald Trump. This man who did nothing wrong himself since the day he took office has been constantly intimidated since the first day he took office. Where is that same kind of hatred being shown towards the great Obama for his acts of injustice? He gave $15 billion taxpayer dollars to Iran, willfully, looking the other way when Hillary Clinton sold our uranium stockpiles to Russia in a deliberate Russian collusion that is so obvious, yet the Federal Bureau of Investigation did nothing about. It goes on and on with no explanation, only idiocy. Now take the ads we see on television now. The Tower of Babel was an attempt by mankind to build a structure that could reach into heaven, in an arrogant sort of gesture that man could even try reaching God. God answered this blatant act of hatred by destroying it. The Tower of Babel was located originally in the country of Iraq. Today, we see a direct reference to this ancient tower in an ad about one point. The world has technology that outmatches anything mankind has ever had before in the history of the world. The narrator says in arrogance, at the touch of a button you can have anything you want. It was the same arrogance that made mankind believe he could be better than God, just like Lucifer tried to do. God banished him from heaven. God destroyed mankind's attempts to make something like this in the sky. Let's take another ad that is currently airing on television, the Black Panther movie. The blacks love it because it deliberately says that blacks must have a hero of their own. I thought Martin Luther King was their god, their deity. Let's bring something else into this discussion that most don't see or don't care to see. There is a group of gangs in New York and other places that have organized themselves into a kind of vigilante group called the Black Panthers. Do you think this is a coincidence? Not at all. Marvel characters made this film to push the idea that the same arrogance, that mankind himself pushed in Babel, is again raising its ugly head to God in defiance to his laws and rules. If mankind believes that God will look the other way, you've forgotten two cities called Sodom and Gomorrah. He didn't look the other way when two cities had become homosexual havens without any shame of their lifestyles. Let's examine an issue that no one even thinks about because Satan clouds the issue of sovereignty. The African slaves came to America as slaves, not immigrants. When they were freed by Abraham Lincoln, nowhere in the Emancipation Proclamation does it say they were made citizens of this country. Yes, they were freed but not made citizens. Since 1865, blacks have lived in this country as aliens who never were made citizens. What should have happened after the freedom of the slaves was that they should have been shipped back to Africa, where they originated from, and then be permitted to apply to come to America as citizens or immigrants. They didn't, because when they came to America from the tribes they lived in, they saw how totally different this country was from their own impoverished nation. Do you see the blacks going back to help Ethiopia or any other African cities to help them? No, because they feel they must be given retribution for the years they were slaves. If you saw how much better you were as a slave rather than a free man in a nation of prosperity, would you ever want to return to the tribal life you had? Absolutely not. They were smart enough to see that when they got to America, they had no intention of revolting and returning to Africa again. Instead, every black in this country today took the names of their slave masters instead of using their own tribal names because they really had no names at all but one. Now move forward in time 150 years later. The welfare system in America was started for blacks because they couldn't work, since no one was telling them to anymore. They had no desire to be better because their masters took care of them. That's what society refuses to tell you or anyone else. They knew better, they knew how to live, but they have used the lie that their ancestors were ignorant and stupid when they came to America. They were sly and egotistical enough to act stupid to gain whatever they needed. Today, they are at the next stage of this retribution. They are forcing their wills on all whites and making their desires to be the only option we all have to live by today. The Tower of Babel was in Iraq, yet we see signs that the tower has been rebuilt already. This is an obvious way that the blacks and their antichrist, Barack Hussein Obama, want their ways of living to be a global mandate. That all shall bow to a black and what they make us live by. The Tower of Babel was destroyed by God, and he has said in his word, the Antichrist will be destroyed in the end of time when Jesus Christ returns to earth for his church. Then for 1,000 years, he will be exiled to the bottomless pit with the false prophet and Satan himself. Let's bring one other point to the forward that you probably don't know. Blacks believe that they are the original race that God made when Adam and Eve were created in the Garden of Eden. All because the Egyptians are confirmed as being of the black race. What you don't know about the Tower of Babel is that God created the different races when the tower was destroyed. He made different races, languages, to confuse the men who built the tower. Then those of the same language left Iraq to make their own races and cultures in other lands. If you look at the Middle East, the primary color of people there are 10. Peoples like the Syrians, the Israelis, and then the Europeans. The black race make up primary the continent of Africa itself, not all regions around there. This is the false pretense that they feel that God favored them because they were slaves. The Israelis were slaves too. They felt no shame at being slaves either. God was teaching them that if you disobey, you will be punished, and the Israelites were punished many times. So these two ads being the primary reason for this video, let's say with all fairness that the black race is today forcing themselves on the world to live the way they tell us. It's all Obama's reasoning, that he wants socialism in America. They do too. Where did fairness go? Where did rational thought go? Who is controlling this ideology today? Satan, Lucifer, Barack Obama. It all adds up to the same conclusion: the Antichrist is here and he's controlling our way of life. But one other point is still unexplained: where do women get their power to control the world from? She is known in the Bible as the harlot of Babylon, another city that was in Iraq. The Western culture is forcing its own ideals on nations that had always been untouched by other cultures, like Muslims. They have lived the same way for 2,000 years. Now in the past 20 years, Western culture has manipulated the philosophies of the Islamic nations. It is the women of America who is forcing their beliefs on these cultures. That has never happened in human history, that one culture could so influence other nations that it would change how they live. It isn't a good thing either, it makes the Muslims even more hateful of America. We are infidels to them. That's not only because Allah tells them to kill us, but the influence that women have made in the Islamic world. Making a woman believe she is better than a man, that she is superior to a man, that she is physically more stronger than a man. It's like a domino effect. The more they boast in the world, the faster the hate grows against our nation. Let's end this discussion with one point that was mentioned in the Tower of Babel ad. Artificial intelligence is such a radically new concept in the human experience because at no time have we ever had the opportunity to have a life of complacency. An artificial intelligence will eliminate much of the things we do every day of our lives. This narrator said with arrogance that AIs are everywhere now. That might seem true because they are shown in ads, but I haven't seen an artificial intelligence in my neighborhood yet. That same technology will be used to control us, according to the Bible. And the Antichrist, the beast, will make unto himself his own likeness to control the world's populations. It will have the ability to move, speak, articulate life itself. That's a perfect description of an artificial intelligence. Who wants the artificial intelligence? Women do. They want another tool that can be manipulated against men even more than they have done since the beginning of time. When Obama was an illegitimate president, he gave power to the NAACP to force their beliefs on society. They attacked the Southern way of life and said, "We won't allow you to live that way anymore." He destroyed statues, but he can't destroy individual rights, individual thought. He might say it's a crime to think a certain way, but he can't strip it from our minds. That's where he fails. God said that the Antichrist can only offer a choice, not a forced choice. Men still have free will to choose what they believe in. Obama is saying we don't need guns, we don't need anything but the government to take care of us. That's the lie, that's what the blacks are forcing on society. Evil is evident, will you see it before it's too late? Maybe it is too late, but not too late to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior. He is the only hope this world has now, but the blacks believe that God showed them favor. That's their delusion, he's not helping them. Satan is, Lucifer himself is, Obama is.
Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. Jesus loves the little children. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to Him belong, they are weak, but He is strong. Yes, Jesus loves
لأنه بيحب الوطن، بيحب الوطن، بيحب الوطن، لأنكم بيحب الوطن، بيحب الوطن.
Dr. Caples, Dr. Caples. Chris Gordo, 6319. Chris Gordo, 6319. Dr. Caples, Dr. Caples, call the operator.
you. I say go away. You bother me.
What if I don't want to?
I'll spank you.